Welcome to another episode of What's the Rumpus. I'm Adrian Hanna.
I'm Charles Thomas.
I am a banana.
I am a stabbing robot.
I am El Gringo.
I don't have another one.
Okay, I win.
Damn it.
End of episode.
Next time, man. Next time.
Well, it's been a while since we've, recorded an episode.
We haven't gotten any less goofy, though.
That's true.
That's good.
Yeah. We were going to record last weekend, which was the 4th of July weekend, but the G train in Brooklyn is a huge pile of shit ever since Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
And they just started doing construction work on it last weekend. So holiday weekend plus subway construction equals Adrian can't get to Manhattan.
Yeah, also a guy whizzed on the third rail and died.
Don't whiz on the electric fence. From Blamo.
Awesome.
I am still El Gringo. All right, so first off, I think we should talk about cool things that we like that we've found since the last time that we talked.
Okay.
And by talked, I mean recorded it, because we talk every day.
That gesture looks super awkward. It's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Can I get another coffee mug?
And this goes out to you, our viewers. All right.
We needed the more you know shooting star across our heads. It doesn't really apply, but I think it would work anyway.
Yeah. Just to emphasize the awkward pose.
Yeah.
Okay. So first thing I wanted to talk about was the Minium keyboard.
Oh yeah.
Which I told you about.
That's right.
So basically, what these guys did is they said, you know what, keyboards suck for mobile devices or anything where you have a keyboard that's not like a hard, I can't think of what it's called.
Physical?
Yeah, like a physical keyboard. So like your phone, you go to type and it pops up a keyboard that takes up half your screen, and you're like, right. WTF, I don't want to do this. And then you're using your thumbs, and your thumbs are huge, and so you mistype things, and it does its best to predict what you're trying to say, but it never works right, and so you say the wrong ducking word all the time.
Also, autocorrect doesn't like swears.
No.
Which sucks.
Although Android is pretty good at allowing you to use them.
Yeah, I think for a long time iPhone just straight up wouldn't let you correct duck to fuck.
Yeah. So you just...
Or uncorrect fuck to duck, rather, I guess is a better way to say it.
So on Android, if you just keep typing fuck and it keeps correcting it to duck and you change it, eventually it'll be like, all right, so you're trying to say fuck and not duck. Yeah. Which sucks, because then when you're trying to talk about that awesome duck that you saw down by the pond to your mom, it completely screws everything up.
I had no idea you were into voyeurism.
Anyways, so what this keyboard does is they try and kind of reinvent the keyboard to make it take up less real estate on your screen. And what they ended up coming up with was this really, really novel idea for how to do a keyboard that extends beyond just mobile devices. So basically what it does is it takes your keyboard, the standard QWERTY keyboard, and each key along the bottom is one column of characters. So it's QAZ is one character, WSX is another character, EDC is another character, and on across. And you just hit whichever button corresponds to one of those three letters that you're looking for, and it's able to figure out what you're saying based on the combination of buttons that you pushed.
That's a really cool idea, except it seems like it would take quite a while to get used to.
Yeah, but the reason that that this is such a novel idea is because, and they demonstrate this in the demo video on their website, but basically it makes it so that you have a single strip of keys to hit, which means that in order to make a keyboard, all you need is some way to broadcast electricity from one side of the keyboard to the other, and a way to be able to measure the feedback of that electricity, basically to tell the distance of your finger from the source of the lead. So you can, like, what they did is they had a guy had a metal watch on, and they plugged two leads onto the watch, and it measured the electricity on the guy's forearm based on the distance away from the watch. And he just wrote, like with a pen, the characters on his skin, and then as he was touching them, it's showing up on a monitor the letters that he's typing.
That is awesome.
Or they took a piece of paper and put like graphite or something on it and then attached the leads to it, and then you could just touch the piece of paper wherever you wanted and it would so you can literally use this for anything in any kind of medium, which is why it's so cool. I mean, the mobile app thing is pretty cool because, you know, it makes typing a little bit easier. You're not as kludgy with it because it knows that you're gonna fuck up because you got huge thumbs and and it takes up less space, which is also nice because there's been a few apps that I've used where you go to do something and then you're like, okay, I'm done typing things, now what do I do? And you don't know what to do because the button...
You have to hit the thing to get the keyboard to go away. Yeah, that's happened to me before. And like, what's interesting about this is like, if you think about the size of a keyboard, there's like, traditionally, I'm cheating by looking at Adrian's keyboard, but there's like 5 rows. There's the numbers, and then QWERTY, and then ASDF, and then ZXC, and then spacebar and control characters and stuff. So effectively, you can take it from 5 rows immediately down to 3 or even 1 if you don't include numbers and spaces and stuff. So that like it reduces by 80% the amount of screen real estate it would take up, which is massive.
Right, and beyond that, it also makes your typing more efficient because you're not having to type around. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when we talked about this before, it never even occurred to me that they would do it in stuff other than a mobile device. But it actually makes me wonder which they thought of first. They were like, man, this screen is enormous, but half of it is keyboard. Let's try and fix that. And they were like, oh, well, if we are doing this, then we can transfer it to this. Or if they did it the other way, where they were like, how do we make a really efficient keyboard that we can make out of literally anything? And then they were like, well, this system works so well, let's turn it into software. I wonder which.
Yeah, I think
it's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, I think it started with the mobile device thing, and then just evolved from that. But either way, yeah, it's still a pretty damn cool idea. And they have or had a Kickstarter, and
it was Indiegogo, wasn't it?
It might have been. I don't remember. It was one of those.
Only correcting because if people are listening to this and want to try and find it.
That's true. It's so yeah. It's on one of the. I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
But They did a Kickstart or Indiegogo fundraiser and got some money from some people, and I was one of those people.
Did you get a copy of the software?
Not yet.
Okay.
They're still working on pushing out the beta, but I get updates in email.
Okay.
Every now and
Because
again.
it looked like in the demo video, it looks like it's totally functional. I wonder what problems they're having that's taking so long.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably, making it work on all the different devices.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's Android, so.
Right.
That's unfortunate, but
What's interesting though, this just occurred to me. It has to be Android because there's no way that Apple would let that into their store.
Nope.
Yeah. That's a whole other discussion for another time.
Yeah.
One we've had several times on the podcast already. So go back through lost episodes, and I'm sure you can find plenty of us complaining about Apple.
Yes, indeed.
In fact, we had a segment called Dumbass Apple News for a while.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yet we both have Apple laptops.
I have a Firefly that kills fascists.
Dun 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 dun. So another thing I wanted to talk about was Hemless.
Yeah.
It's HEML.is because that's the domain name. But Hemless it's Swedish. It's Swedish for secret.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
I like that name way more now.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that's a really terrible name. Did they just like burr?
So it's there's 3 founders to the company, one of which is Brokep, which is one of the Pirate Bay guys. I can't remember his name.
Peter or something?
Yeah. And he and 2 of his buddies in Sweden decided that, and this was totally reactionary to Prism and that whole debacle, but they decided that communicating is not as private as it should be because the government sucks, and by the government I mean all governments pretty much.
It's totally Peter Sunda.
Nice. So so they decided that everyone's trying to snoop all your business and they shouldn't be able to snoop any of your business, and there's not really a reliable IM platform or protocol that allows you to talk privately or stop or not log any of your communications. So they're built.
Snoops, we want our dog and lion.
Yes. Yes, it was the same person.
Yeah, I know. So something that I think is interesting and worth noting is when Adrian told me about this, I had seen it already, but I didn't look into it that much. And my first question to him was, how is this different from OTR? So in instant messaging, there's OTR, which is off the record, which does encrypted direct communication.
It basically sets up a SSL tunnel for your communication.
Right.
So
that whatever centralized server you're using for instant messaging, like AOL or Jabber or whatever, I don't think it even goes through that server anymore. I think it's a direct connection, but also it's encrypted anyway.
Right.
So even if you were being man in the middle, they wouldn't be able to determine anything.
Right.
But the distinction between Hemless and this is that Hemless is completely anonymized, whereas with off the record you have to create a connection through the server and then request anonymity and privacy, or privacy and encryption and whatever. Whereas Hemless, the entire thing is secret. So
it's also asynchronous too. That was the big difference between OTR and the way they're working is like with Hemless, it's it encrypts it using it will rather encrypt it using PGP instead of like SSL. So that way you are actually encrypting the message. So I can send you a message on Hemless, and you can be in the subway not available for chat, and the message will come from me and go through the server, and then eventually when you come back online, it'll deliver the message to you, right, encrypted through the whole pattern.
Right. And
they've said that the messages will only be stored on their servers for as long as it takes to confirm delivery to the end user, and then it's immediately wiped from their servers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. This is sort of off topic, but it just occurred to me that like mobile devices really changed the internet I want to say backwards, but that's not really what I mean. But it's interesting that like instant messaging became popular as always-on connections became popular. Like it's and so when people were on modems, you never knew when somebody was going to be dialed in, and so you used a BBS. Then as people started to use the internet more and more, and they were on for longer amounts of time, or had an connection open longer, they started to use stuff that was immediate. And now that we're on phones all the time, it's sort of going back the other way, where things have to work even when people aren't connected, which I think is interesting. I can't think of any other good examples right now, but I don't know. I'm sure there's something there.
Yeah.
But I just thought of that distinction as we were talking about this, because like with any other instant messenger, I think most instant messengers now have the ability to save a message until you connect again. But when instant messaging started, that didn't exist.
Right. I know that Google Talk, basically every transcript of every chat that you have with Google Talk gets stored in your Gmail archives. And if you get a message after you have gone offline, the message is basically delivered to your inbox. It's like, you have a new message from so-and-so, or so-and-so said something, or new chat transcript, or whatever. I don't know what it is, because basically all of the IMing I do is with OTR, so it never gets there. Yeah.
The other big problem with OTR is that most phone clients don't support it.
Right.
So, well, that's not what I mean. The problem with OTR is that due to the nature of instant messaging, you can connect from multiple machines, and if the person that's sending the message had an OTR connection with you that was broken, but they didn't like close their chat window or anything, and OTR wasn't like turned off, then, for example, if I go underground and my connection breaks, and then Adrian sends me a message from the same IM window, when I come back above ground, I just see the encrypted version. I don't see the unencrypted version, because the only way to get that back is to reestablish a brand new OTR connection.
Yep.
and none of that is a problem with Endless.
It's also an issue if you have multiple connections and you're talking OTR with somebody on one connection and then you are suddenly on the other connection, like on a different device, and all of a sudden you're just getting gobbledygook.
Like, right, so like if we're IMing back and forth on our computers and then I don't know, go to the toilet and I'm trying to IM from my phone, then I'm still getting the unencrypted version on my desktop. Well,
the decrypted version.
The decrypted version, thank you, that was what I was looking for. But I'm getting the encrypted version on my phone, so I can send him messages, but I can't read anything he sends me.
Right, and then it doesn't tell me that I'm receiving messages in plain text. So I should try and reestablish the connection, which is a pain in the ass.
That actually makes me think of Whisper Systems. Have you heard of these guys?
Mm-mm.
I don't remember how Moxie Marlinspike got on my radar, probably because of his badass name.
Yeah.
But he's a security researcher dude. Actually, it's probably through IOAir. Jacob Applebaum.
Oh, yeah.
I follow him on Twitter. Anyway, Moxie Marlinspike started Whisper Systems, which is, I just remembered how I found it, which is a company that does secure communication stuff. So they have a secure text messaging client, which I think does, I don't know how it, well, you have to text in the app, but I think it might still use your phone number. I'm not 100% sure how it works. But basically it's end-to-end encrypted text messaging. They also have one for phone calls, which is pretty cool. So you can make encrypted phone calls. The only problem with these systems is that each person has to have it installed. There's no way to make a phone call to my mom and it's encrypted because I tried to encrypt the connection. She would have to create the account, install the app, and then establish the thing. But yeah, so I remembered how I found it. It was they supported full disk encryption on certain Android phones before it was built into Android itself. And so that's how I came across it, because I was trying to figure out how to enable full disk encryption on my phone.
Gotcha.
But now it's built in.
Hooray! All right. So interesting that you bring up Moxie Marlinspike because I always associate him with DEF CON. And as of today, the DEF CON, the documentary, is now available through the DEF CON website.
Oh, nice.
It's a documentary about the complete history, the complete 20-year history of DEF CON.
Awesome.
And first of all, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of documentaries that have come out in the last few years about the hacker community, and they've been pretty good. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one. I am surrounded by fucking bugs.
Yeah.
I must stink. Anyways, the DEF CON documentary is available for $50 or $200.
Whoa!
So the $50 version, you get the complete documentary on a USB key, and it's a pretty snazzy. It's like the one that you have that's like key shaped that you can put on a key ring, and it says DEF CON. It has the DEF CON logo on it, and it comes with a DVD case that holds the USB key in case you want to do that instead of carrying it around with you or whatever, and a lanyard, and of course the pride in knowing that you supported the DEF CON documentary.
Right.
The $200 version comes with a 500 gigabyte hard drive, external hard drive, USB hard drive.
Okay.
A bunch of bonus footage, an art book, the lanyard, the complete DEF CON archive, which is every presentation that's ever been made at DEF CON.
That is awesome.
And a metal lunchbox.
Nice.
Which would be perfect to build a pirate box in.
Well, maybe. Would it? I guess it's probably pretty thin metal.
Yeah. It's like a standard old school lunchbox.
Yeah, those are pretty thin. You can probably get a Wi-Fi signal through that.
Yeah.
And if all else fails, you can just make the antenna detachable on the outside of the box.
Yeah. Well, and when I first saw it, when I just looked at the picture, I was like, they're selling a pirate box as part of the premium thing. I was like, that sounds awesome, but it's not. It's a lunchbox. I'm sure somebody at some point thought, hey, let's give some people a lunchbox so they can totally make pirate boxes.
Yeah. So which version are you buying?
I will be buying the $50 version because the $200 version is a little bit pricey for
Yeah.
a little rich for my blood.
Yeah.
I would totally do it if I had $200 just laying around anywhere. I would have already bought it. It would already be on its way to my apartment.
I really like the idea of both of those things. I think they're both overpriced, but I am also not as much of a supporter of DEF CON as you. Not that I don't like DEF CON, I just am not as into it. Like, it's one of those things that I'm really happy exists, but I don't want to give them that much money.
Word.
On this topic, I don't know if you're done talking about the documentary, but did you see Dark Tangent posted on the DEF CON blog requesting the feds don't go to DEF CON this year?
Yeah, I did see
all the
that.
NSA stuff.
Yeah. He said it was Dark Tangent is the guy who started DEF CON and is actually on some computer security advisory board for the U.S. government as of like a year or two ago.
Makes sense.
But he publicly asked that feds don't show up to DEF CON this year because of the hacker community still processing the whole PRISM breach of privacy thing. And actually, I read a little bit of follow-up to that. A handful of researchers, security researchers, have canceled their talks at DEF CON.
Wow.
Because they think that it was a bad move on DEF CON's part. They think that...
Really?
Yeah, they think that one of the guys said that DEF CON has always been kind of a neutral ground.
Right.
You know, because since its inception, they've had a game called Spot the Fed. And if you can find somebody that works for, and it's not works for the federal government, it's like somebody from the FBI, CIA, NSA, one of those agencies, then you get the. I don't think you actually get a prize, but you get like a pat on the back from everyone for spotting the Fed.
Mm-hmm. Do they have to be there in an official capacity, or is it just like you? I know that you work for the NSA.
I don't think it has to be in an official capacity. I mean,
So I'm just imagining if I worked for, not that I would ever work for the federal government for this kind of thing, but if I did, I would totally just show up at DEF CON as like not in any official capacity, just because I think that stuff is interesting.
Right.
And if
Well, I think for a while it was that the only reason that any of these guys would ever go was in an official capacity. Like, hey, let's scope out who's here this year, and we'll start a dossier on every single one of these people and get their pictures and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're clearly, threats or whatever. And it's just got to a point where, yeah, there's still people that do that, but there's a lot of people that go just, to get some knowledge.
Gotcha.
And hang out with the community. But yeah, so it's like they feel like it's a neutral ground, and by saying please don't come to DEF CON, you're making
it
it
worse for next year.
Yeah, you're making a stance about it, and you let these guys all commingle because it's neutral ground. And if somebody gets mad about it, they can get fucking mad about it, but it's not like it's going to be like, I'm so mad I'm going to murder you or anything like that.
Right.
It might something bad might happen, but it's not. I don't think it would necessarily reflect on the convention.
There's never been any instances of physical violence at DEF CON, have there?
Nothing of any note.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's been like fist fights or something at some point. I mean, there's a lot of drunken debauchery that happens at DEF CON. So,
but it's not like Comic-Con a couple years ago when that dude got stabbed in the eye with a pen.
Yeah.
Jesus. Twilight fans are crazy.
Yeah, totally. So the last thing that I have on my list is I really want to talk about Linode.
Okay.
Linode is a VPS service, a virtual private server service that I just started using recently. Totally reactionary to Prism. I decided to set up my own email and file cloud, etc. And so I decided to try out Linode because I'd heard a couple of people talk about it, and it's actually a really good service. I mean, it's fairly cheap and it's incredibly stable, and their customer service is awesome. I was telling you about this, but I was having issues setting up my email, and I sent the errors I was getting to their customer service, and I sent it to them at like 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the evening on a weeknight, and I was expecting to maybe hear back sometime for the rest of the evening, but more than likely the next day. Before I could get out the door of the office on my way home, I had already gotten a response from somebody saying, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And they worked with me very quickly and gave me some really helpful hints on fixing everything on and off for about 2 days, until finally they were like, "We have no idea what's going on. You might want to go to our forums and talk to our community, because if anybody's going to be able to figure it out, it's those guys." And I was like, "Okay, awesome." And they have a really good community and a lot of like solid knowledge base. Like there's like 7 different tutorials on how to set up Postfix and Dovecot as an email service on a Linode, and it's pretty comprehensive. So
that's pretty awesome.
I don't mind giving them a free plug and saying, if you're going to get a VPS, use Linode.
Yeah, I started trying to move away from all that stuff a while ago, even before Prism, because I'm a Prism hipster, I guess. The implications of what I just said are terrifying. Anyway,
did you hear about the hipster that burned his mouth on some pizza?
Yes, I did many times.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I used HostGator because I didn't want to have to try and figure out Postfix, and I've actually been fairly disappointed with them. Everything got set up quickly, but every time I run into a problem, I get a resolution that kind of sort of works, but it never really is satisfactory. Like a couple days ago, I noticed that all of my pages were down, and so I tried to log into their live chat system. And the guy basically said, "Oh, well, it's okay now, so closed case." And I was like, "Well, what happened before that it wasn't okay?" And I never really got an answer. And then on top of that, because their system is broken, I couldn't log in with my user credentials, so they just thought I was some jerk, as opposed to a paying customer, because their authentication system is broken. So that was really disappointing. It's cheaper, but it's only like $6 cheaper a month.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like for $72 a year, I should move to Linode and have a system that's better.
Yeah. Plus, they offer a lot more customization on the VPS.
Right.
So you can say, I want the bare bones. Well, this is exactly what I did. Is I want the bare bones VPS because I don't need a lot of network bandwidth. This is going to be used exclusively by me, and no one else is ever going to look at anything on this, pretty much. So I don't need the network bandwidth. I don't need a lot of processing power. I don't need a lot of memory. I just need a box. And then I set it up, and I would notice that I was going to end up using way more storage than I had on the box. So I went into the configuration, and for like an extra like $10 a month, I get a bunch more space on my drive, and it's great. If you don't know what you're doing with a computer or like a Linux server or whatever, I don't think I would recommend it, because it's very much do it yourself, make everything do things that you want it to do, and it's not really set up for just the average Joe Schmo.
Right.
But for power users like you or I,
I think that's actually part of the reason I dislike HostGator, is because it's one of those companies that's designed for somebody that's like, I run a plumbing company and I need a website.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I am a professional IT industry person and I need a virtual server. Those are very different use cases.
Yeah.
And, the customer service, I think the reason I don't like HostGator's customer service is because they're trying to do less technical stuff for non-technical people, and I want technical stuff for a technical person.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's starting to bug me about domain.com, because I do all of my domain buying on domain.com. It used to be great. I mean, it used to be really sparse and kind of a pain in the butt to use sometimes, but I mean, it's like literally anything that you wanted to do with DNS, you could do through domain, and it was fairly easy to do as long as you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, insofar as if you wanted to add a record to your DNS, to your zone file, it gave you like 3 fields. It was like the record type, the TTL, and or 4 fields. So you have your the actual record, the record type, the TTL, and the pointer field. And that was it. And like it wasn't even like a drop down. So it's like you had to know what record type you wanted. But you could put whatever record you wanted in there.
Right.
And now they're starting to do like web hosting stuff, and so it's just getting worse and worse to where like I was trying to set up an SRV file in my my DNS, and I couldn't do it. They don't let you make an SRV file.
What is
Or
SRV?
You use it for like if you're setting up like a Jabber server. So you can say, you can set up an SRV for me, like adrianhanna.net, you can set up an SRV record that says, if you're looking for XMPP on adrianhanna.net, this is actually where it lives. So you put in like xmpp.adrianhanna.net, and you can put in a bunch of other like stuff.
So it's like mapping a protocol to a domain name?
It kind of, yeah. And you can put in a lot of other arguments into it, and it depending on the service that you're pointing it to,
right.
it'll accept those as like arguments for it or whatever.
Okay.
But
so it's like wildcard stuff, sort of.
Yeah, it's almost like having a text record, but it actually does stuff. So domain.com is getting to a point where it's not what I need anymore, unfortunately, but I still think it's better than GoDaddy.
I've had a lot of problems with domain registrars recently. So I used GoDaddy for a long time because I knew that I knew how to use it, and I knew that it would be fast and cheap. And then they supported CISPA and PIPA and whatever the one was before that. SOPA. They were in favor of it, so I immediately moved all my domains off of them to name.com. Then I found out name.com was doing something shady, but I don't even remember what it was. They were selling some kind of information, I think, to somebody. And so now I started using Namecheap, which is the reason I started using them is because every now and then they do sales where part of the proceeds go to the EFF, which I think is great. And because they're donating to the EFF, I assume that they are good with privacy concerns, and they're, I don't know, if you are an EFF supporter, it's probably a safe assumption that you're an okay guy. That's sort of one of my shortcut tests, like, oh, you're aware of what the EFF is and you support them? Okay. As long as we're not talking about net neutrality, I am on the same page. And then the other problem is I really like domains where the geodomain is part of a word in the name of the thing, which means that sometimes I have to register with a lot of shady places. Like my personal website is .as, which is American Samoa, and they have a terrible domain buying and registering system. It's just the worst. It's like 1989 technology. Like they have a web form with no styling, and you fill it out, and it's basically imagine going to like the DMV. Oh shit! I gotta go to the DMV next week. Imagine going to the DMV and getting a form and then filling it out in pen and then handing it back to somebody and then them checking it over and then them giving it back to you because you made a mistake and then you changing it and giving it back to them and then they give it to somebody else to do something else and then blah, blah, blah. That whole process where really what you should be doing is clicking some check boxes on a web form and hitting OK instead of like this weird manual back and forth stuff. That's like convert that weird bureaucratic process into a web page, and that's how you have to register stuff.
Yuck.
Like to log in, you have to type in your email address and the domain you want to log into, and then hit go, and somebody manually makes sure that email address corresponds to that domain, and then they send you an email with a code to type in to log in. So you like it's always one-time passwords, but I'm pretty sure that it requires manual intervention on their side to validate stuff. It's pretty bad.
That sounds pretty gross.
Yeah. I don't remember what my point was with that, but it sucks.
Slate. break for station identification.
You need to stop and restart it, right?
Yeah, I think it stopped already.
Oops. Hopefully it was just during my weird rant about domain registrars.
Whew, it must have just stopped. Okay, so here's the camera. It is round.
No, it's not. That bird is a liar. All right, fellows.
And
have we made it through your list of notes?
Yes.
And stuff you want to? Okay. Did you just throw away something in your Mac recycle bin?
yes.
That was dumb.
I lolled.
Sorry. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about that I don't have notes for. I'm actually pretty proud of both of these things. I've been doing a lot of coding in the last couple months. I think I've talked about ProAuth and Moth already, which are the open source Python packages that I put into PyPy. And since then, I've launched 2 new websites, 2 new web apps actually, that I really want to talk about because I'm pretty proud of both of them. So the first one, I already flubbed and mentioned Buffer already when we were trying to talk about DEF CON because it's on my mind. But I've been using Buffer for a really long time. It's a really awesome service. And it does, what it does is a really simple idea, but it's pretty well implemented and it works really well. And basically Buffer is just, I want to post a bunch of crap to some social media, but I don't want to do it all at once. I want to like schedule it out. So you basically create a schedule, which is when you want to post something, and then you put a bunch of stuff in your queue, and then if you have something in your queue, the next time the next thing on the next slot on the schedule comes up, it just takes whatever the last thing or the first thing is on the queue and sends it out. So, for example, I have my links, or my links blog, I call it, I guess, but charleston.as/links. It's just a WordPress blog with a bunch of neat crap that I found on the internet. But every time I post to that, the link goes into Buffer, and then every half an hour, Buffer sends out whatever the most recent thing is in my queue. So when I post stuff to my links blog, it's usually in bursts because I'm like waiting for a test to run, or I have 20 minutes to fart around on the internet, or for whatever reason. So I'm going through my RSS reader and I find 5 or 10 different things that I think are really interesting, and within the span of like 10 minutes, I've made anywhere between like 5 and 25 posts on the links blog. And if it weren't for Buffer, I would either have to schedule times for those to be published through WordPress, which is time consuming and gross because you have to fill out a form each time, or they would all auto tweet at once and I would just spam all my followers. So instead what happens is they go to Buffer, and then I spent half an hour reading my RSS stuff and I made 10, 15 posts. It's going to take 5 hours for all those things to actually get tweeted out. So it looks like I'm doing really interesting stuff all the time, but really I'm just using Buffer and making myself look better, and not spamming people. So anyway, the web app that I built is called BufferTime, BUFFERTI.me, another one of those weird TLDs that I like to put into the name. Anyway, Buffer is really awesome, but it's big. The only real problem I've ever had with Buffer is that it's really hard to create a schedule, because you can't just like, I want to tweet every 15 minutes between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. That functionality doesn't exist in Buffer. So in order to create every 15 minutes for 8 hours, you have to create a manual record every 15 minutes for 8 hours. So 8 hours times 4 is 24 records. Is that right? I think so. So you have to manually create 24 different records. And Buffer supports 32. Yeah. Math is hard. 32 different records. Buffer supports LinkedIn, app.net, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you wanted to do that for each of your social networking sites, then that's 32 times 4, 128. That seems right. So 128 different times you have to manually click a box and select the time in the drop down, and I don't think you have to save it, but it's just, once all of that is done, Buffer is awesome, but doing all of that sucks. So Buffer Time does basically exactly what I described. You go to the website, you click a button, it takes you to Buffer to confirm that you want to use Buffer Time. So you sign in through Buffer, you don't have to do any account stuff on Buffer Time. It redirects you back to Buffer Time if you click yes, I want to use this app on Buffer, and it just gives you a very simple web form. It's got the list of accounts you have connected to Buffer. You click one of them, it says, I want to tweet every X minutes between X time and X time. You fill out that 3 drop-down form and you hit go, and it generates the schedule for you and saves it in Buffer. So then you go to Buffer and you check your schedule, and then it has all of that stuff listed. That was the biggest problem I ever had with Buffer, and I managed to solve it. And I was really happy with how well it turned out.
So were they.
Yeah, so were they. I was so excited about getting it to work. It was an idea that I had a really long time ago, but I had already created my schedules, so I didn't. It was like sort of a back burner idea. But then a couple of months ago, I decided I didn't want to be on social networks anymore, so I deleted all my accounts on Google Plus and Twitter and app.net and all these other things. And so I deleted my Buffer account. And then I decided that that was dumb, and I really like Twitter, so I reinstated my account, which meant that I had to create a new Buffer account and then set up schedules again. So I created the thing mostly because I didn't want to have to do that. So I spent like 15 to 20 hours on a weekend making something to prevent me from spending 10 minutes making the schedule.
Sounds legit.
Yeah, but anyway, when I was done with it, it worked so well that I emailed the Buffer guys, and I was like, hey, I made this thing, and they were like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is the biggest complaint we've ever had about, or not complaint, this is the most requested feature, I think they said. So I was really excited about that, about how excited they were about it, because I thought it was really cool, but the fact that they thought it was cool also was sort of a big feather in my cap. And the other thing that I did is I finally have a working version of Roust, which is something, it's an idea I had, I don't know, months and months ago, maybe even almost a year ago.
A long ass fucking time ago in a town called Kickapoo.
Precisely. I was going home from a book signing one night, and it was in some place that I had never been. It was in the city, but it was in some weird neighborhood that I had never been to. And on my way home, I was thinking about the fact that I really enjoy wandering around New York, but I'm really bad at wandering. Like, I can't just start walking somewhere and end up in a new place. Like, I get locked into these like known routes, and I just take those routes because I know how to do it, and I know where it is, and it's sort of like on autopilot. So if I start walking somewhere, like if I start walking from Union Square, I will end up at the subway on the way to go home, because that's just what I do. I mean, I work near Union Square. Every time I walk from the subway to my office, and from the office to the subway. So if I'm in Union Square and I start wandering, I'm going to either end up at the office or the subway. And if I'm at home and I start wandering, I'm going to end up at the 86th Street subway stop. Because those are the only places I ever walk to. And so I wanted something that would tell me where to go that was totally random, so that I could wander. I don't know how to wander, so I made a tool that would help me do it, basically. So Roust, ROU.st, is a really simple web app where you load the page, it asks you if you want to share your location. You say yes, because otherwise nothing works. And you give it a distance of 1, 5, 10, or 25 miles and hit go, and Roust takes the location data that you gave me, and picks a random set of GPS coordinates within the radius of the distance you specified, and then sends you to Google Maps. So, if I'm at home, I open the page and it says, "Hey, you're at whatever location." I don't remember my GPS coordinates. Why would I ever need to know that? And I want to go somewhere within a mile, and I hit the button, and it sends me somewhere basically in my neighborhood, but somewhere I may have never gone before. And I actually used it for the first time a couple nights ago, and it sent me from my apartment to 82nd and 3rd, I think. No, 2nd. 82nd and 2nd. And it was somewhere I had been before, but it was like, I want to go for a walk, but I don't want to just do a lap. I want to go somewhere, and I don't really know what to do. Basically, the ideal use case for Roust. So it sent me on a walk, and true story, I saw a house run a red light. It was like a prefab house that was on its trailer, and there was several trailers carrying prefab house pieces, and they were trying to keep the convoy going, so they blasted through the red light so that they wouldn't have to get lost behind the other stuff. But never would have seen a house run a red light if I hadn't used Roust.
There you go. If you ever put testimonials on the website, you should use that one.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people are using either of those things yet. I need to put analytics on both of them. I think I'm going to do that this weekend. But I'm really happy with the way both of those things turned out.
Yeah, Roust is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever figure out how to get it to not put you in the water?
Well, it doesn't anymore, but I kind of miss that. So the way I set it up is because so the GPS coordinates it chooses are totally random. Well, totally random, totally pseudo-random. But because it's using Google Maps as the sort of endpoint, Google Maps tries to make sense of the coordinates you gave it. So if you give them a start address and a destination address, which I'm doing, it assumes that you want to be on land, which I guess is a safe assumption. But if you don't give it a start address, then it will just put the pointer on the map wherever it actually is. And so it is possible to end up in the middle of the East River, for example.
And nobody wants to end up in the middle of the East River.
Yeah.
That's gross. I'm going to use it right now.
Yeah, so and I've actually been thinking about how to fix this because I sent it to a couple of people and they didn't really get it. Because it when you use random coordinates and you use it as a destination address instead of as just a straight up look up this location, it tries to make sense of your request, and so it will take you to an apartment building specifically or something like that, and it sort of takes away from the random capriciousness of the idea. So I don't know. And the other thing is, I wanted it to also be completely random because, Foursquare is a thing where you go to a business and you check in. Yelp is a thing where you want to go somewhere, so you give it a bunch of parameters to look up places to go. I wanted this to be I should go wander through this neighborhood and see what this is all about. And the way it's set up right now, it doesn't really do that. It's more take a left, walk 5 miles, and then take a left and walk 3 miles.
Russ just told me to go to Sliders.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Awesome. We should go to Sliders.
Totally.
Yeah, so, it's the first iteration. It does what I wanted it to do, but I don't think it does what other people want it to do, based on the people that have tried it. So I'm looking for ideas on how to make it better. So if you're listening to this, all 4 viewers that we have, try it and email, please reply at rou.st and tell me how to make Roust better. And if you use Buffer, try Buffer Time and email help at bufferti.me.
Buffer Dime.
Did I just?
No, you spelled it right.
Okay.
You were about to spell Buffer Dime.
Anyway, is that like Cyberdyne? Bufferdyne? Anyway, and tell me how to make stuff better.
Awesome. Yeah. I think I told you this before, but I think Charlie is like your ideal demographic for Rouse.
Yeah.
So that dude hops in his car and drives around everywhere.
Yeah. And that's cool because that's exactly what I want, as somebody who's like, I want to go somewhere, but I don't really know where, and I don't really want to like go to a bar or a restaurant. I just want to go somewhere,
right,
and poke around and see what's there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's not Foursquare and it's not Yelp and it's not geocaching, but it's kind of like all of those things.
So I just used it twice, and the first time it told me to go to the data center, and the second time it told me to go to Sliders.
I'm sorry.
Well, after you go to the data center, you do want beer and tiny burgers.
That's true.
Or at least I do.
Mostly. Well, I always want beer and tiny burgers, so.
Well, they're small, so the calories don't count, right?
That's how I heard it. It's like those 100-calorie packs of calorie pack of sliders. You rip it open, and it's just like a third of a slider. Yeah. I have some other stuff I want to talk about too, if we have time.
Sure.
Let's see. Take off a note. All right, so blah, blah, blah. This is just some stories that I thought would be worth talking about. Them. This is really interesting. Lenticular printing.
That sounds dirty.
Is apparently a thing that involves. It's kind of like a hologram. You remember the old like hologram baseball cards where you look at it this way and it's a guy throwing a ball, and you look at it this way and it's a guy hitting a ball.
Yeah.
Apparently, lenticular printing is something like that, and it has to do with the medium that you're looking at, but also the direction and location that you're looking at it from.
Okay.
The use case that I wanted to talk about was posters like on subway or bus stands. If you are an adult or you're a reasonably sized person, you will see one thing. And if you're a child or the height of a child, you will see how to call for help if you're being abused.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool. I mean, it's not cool that we need it, but it's cool that they figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from like 4.5 to 6 feet tall, you will just see some ad. But if you're the height of a 10-year-old, you will see how to call for help if you're being abused, which is just brilliant.
It also makes it so that you can put child inappropriate ads on the
subway.
subway.
Yeah, that's true too, I suppose. Unless you have a really tall child, in which case there's not much we can do for you.
Oh, this reminds me of something that I saw the other day that was really fucking cool, and it was in the UK, I think is where they were doing it. They have installed these devices on windows in the trains.
Oh yeah, it was Germany? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
It was in Europe somewhere, and they installed these little devices that slap onto the windows of the subway, and it basically would, if you leaned your head against the window, it would play an ad, an audio ad, but only you would be able to hear it because it was vibrating the window in such a way that the bones in your head would vibrate to cause audio inside of your ears.
Yeah,
so
it's called bone induction, I think.
Yeah, and there's I mean it's a really cool concept because then you don't have to have obnoxious ads,
Right.
and you can still play ads, and then all you have to do to hear them is put your head against the window and you hear the ads or music or whatever.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the technology, the first time I ever heard of bone induction was the Jawbone Bluetooth devices.
Mm-hmm.
Had it where it wasn't a bone induction speaker, it was a bone induction microphone. So you would put it in your ear and there would be a little thing that like literally touched your skin, and it would, from the vibrations in your jaw, get what you were saying as opposed to your voice outside. So you could be in the middle of a concert and talking to somebody, and they would be able to hear you crystal clear because it was bone induction. They use bone induction headphones. I think it has military uses because it doesn't make any noise if it's not touching you. So you can, and they also use throat mics for the same reason. So you can talk quietly, but people can hear you crystal clear because, and only they can hear you. And so this is the same thing. You slap the thing on the wall, and if you lean your head against the window, then you hear it. And as soon as you disconnect contact between your head and the glass, you don't hear it anymore. It's a brilliant idea, but I hate this particular use case because the only time you ever lean your head on the window is when you're tired. Like, fuck, I'm tired, I want to take a nap. What the hell was that?
I do it when I'm drunk.
Oh, well, okay, that's fair. It actually made me think of the episode of Futurama where they had dreamvertisements. It was like somehow they figured out how to put ads in your dreams. So you like wake up and you want to buy Hanes underwear.
Another interesting use case for this, I think, would be, I don't think you have this problem really because you take the 456, but all of almost all of the trains in the outer boroughs don't have the convenient little, hey, the next stop is this thing, and here's all of the trains, and you have ideally it's not so bad because the conductor is announcing, but the speakers are all fucked up, so you never hear what they're saying, and even if you do, you can't understand what they're saying. It'd be nice to do like the bone induction, so if you're like coming up to a stop, you can just lean your head against the window, and then you hear crystal clear what the conductor is trying to say.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That would be pretty awesome. I just thought of it, and that would be awesome. But then again,
because then you don't have to learn what means.
Yeah, but then again, if the MTA were going to spend money to do something like that, why not just spend the money to fix the fucking speakers?
Yeah. So this next story is a personal favorite because it's brilliant, it's simple, and it totally screwed up an existing system that nobody thought could be broken. So a guy in England got arrested for theft, and instead of being put in jail, he was put under house arrest. And so they gave him one of those little ankle monitors. And the way the ankle monitors work is you start the calibration process, and then you walk around your house, and you like walk the perimeter of your yard, so that they can figure out where the range is for where it is you're actually allowed to go. And they obviously do this with police or some other sort of security, so that they can determine your bounded range, basically. Well, this guy, during his calibration process, broke free from his guards and ran around his block, which seems kind of dumb, except because it was during the calibration, and then he immediately went back to his house and turned himself in. So he was only gone for like 5 minutes. The reason that this is brilliant is because it was during his calibration process. Unless they want to go through the calibration process again, his house arrest is now his entire block.
That's genius.
So as long as he goes anywhere on his block, his ankle monitor won't think that he's away from his house. I just love that. That's so brilliant.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
If only he were clever enough to not get caught stealing.
Yeah, makes you wonder how often he didn't get caught though.
Yeah.
If he was smart enough to think of that, I bet he was smart enough to get away with it a couple of times.
Yes, indeed.
Right. This is a story that I intended to send to you and didn't, and now I'm kicking myself because it's going to be really hard for me to explain. I think you're probably smarter than I am on this kind of thing to figure it out. So, researchers at a place, maybe MIT? No. California Institute of Technology in Pasadena came up with a new way to generate one-time pads.
Okay.
So a one-time pad is a code that's supposed to be random for single-use encryption. Or not necessarily single-use, but for encryption. It's a way to generate an encryption key, basically. And the concept that he came up with is to shine light through a glass panel that and catch the light on the other side of the panel.
Okay.
And the reason that they're doing this is that it's true random. So the problem with computers is that it's impossible to generate a legitimately random number. And so that's why things that in computing are random are called pseudo-random, because they should be random, but they're not totally, truly random. This thing is genuinely random because, so the way it works is you take a hunk of glass, you shine a light through it from a specific angle and distance and at a specific brightness. And out the other side, it won't be the same beam of light. It will be different because part of it will be refracted and part of it will be expanded. Like when you flash a single beam of light through a prism and you get the rainbow coming out, you get different light integrity on the other side in different spots. So if you're collecting the other side of it and you map the light intensities of different locations on the thing on the outside of the light, you can translate that into an encryption key.
Huh. That's pretty clever.
Yeah. So the one problem with it is you have to have physical access to the thing in order to do this. So the only way for it to be truly secure is for both people that want to communicate using this thing to be in the same place at the same time in order to generate the key, or like send the contraption to the other person so that they can do it. But those minor restrictions aside, it's a true random key generation, and once you've generated it, you just destroy the glass because it has. So the reason it's true random is because glass has flaws and deformations in it, but it's completely unpredictable. So you could use the same device to make the same dimensions of glass in an infinite number of times, and you would have an infinite number of different outcomes that they would all be slightly different, maybe only, but they would be different, and so you would get different keys generated from it. And then you just destroy the thing, and that encryption key can never be generated again in the same way.
That's way better than rolling dice a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Which is how they used to generate one-time pads.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually, I read a thing about password generation recently that described the system for doing it, and I can't remember what it's called. It was pretty interesting. It was like dice. I'm not finding it. Anyway, yeah, so that is really brilliant. I was really impressed with this idea. Next story. Sears has closed a bunch of stores. They're trying to figure out what to do with those stores, so they're turning them into data centers.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, this is a really cool idea. I really like this idea for a number of reasons. So, retail stores are enormous, and retail stores are becoming less and less important as online stores become more prevalent. So what do you do with all this wasted real estate? Well, rather than tearing the building down, you just take the shelving out and you retrofit it into a data center. So Sears the program is called Ubiquity, and they're called Ubiquity Critical Environments. And so they basically have most of the stuff that you really need in order to have a data center. You have a big ass room, you just put some elevated flooring into it, or they already have drop ceilings most of the time. You just run all the stuff through the ceiling. They're already air conditioned because who the hell wants to go shopping in the heat?
Yep.
It's a really cool idea.
Absolutely.
And so what's really interesting about this too is that a Sears store can run a data center way bigger than they need to do Sears online shopping. So now you can rent out the rest of the space. And so you can spin up a data center relatively quickly because you don't have to worry about building the building.
I wonder what this is going to do for the cost of data centers in general. Because obviously these stores are all over the country. And so if you start throwing up data centers all over the country in old Sears stores, and they offer competitive pricing. What's that going to do to every other data center?
It's going to have to drive the price down.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. I don't really have that much more to talk about it other than I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
This is another good story about sort of bucking the system. So Drexel University requires students to intern somewhere in order to get their degree. And there was a student who was a CS guy who was already running his own game company. He was making like shitty little iPhone games and stuff. In order to fulfill his internship requirement, he hired himself as his own intern.
Awesome.
Yeah. I really like that. So it was like, I could go work for this company for no money and stop work on the thing that I'm already profitable on, or you could just let me intern for myself and do the things I'm already doing and then write a paper about it when I'm done and still keep making mad money. That makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I'll talk about that because it's going to raise my blood pressure. Oh, this is crazy. Have you heard about vitamin authentication yet?
No.
Motorola is working on this weird protocol thing. I have to reread how it works. It's basically you swallow a little pill, and while the pill is inside you, I don't know what it generates some sort of unique field that you can use for identification purposes. So between the time you swallow the pill and the time you pass the pill, you are your own authentication token.
That's freaky.
Yeah. Freaky and awesome.
Yeah. I don't know that I would ever want to use that, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah. It's really crazy. Let's see. I know that let me see if I can find more information on it. It's been way too long since I did this. It's powered by stomach acid. Once ingested, it creates an 18-bit signal in your body and thereby makes your entire person an authentication token. It's called vitamin authentication.
Can you imagine if you exposed 10-year-old you to the world of today?
No.
That I'm thinking about telling myself when I was a kid, yeah, when you grow up, people are going to be able to swallow vitamins and use that as an authentication system. Me going, what?
The use case for this that they first describe is for wearable technology. So I need to unlock my Apple smartwatch. Oh, I'm already unlocked because I swallowed that vitamin earlier this morning. But the implication of this that I just thought of that's way cooler than that. So, smart guns already exist, which are guns that you have a wristband, and if the gun is pointed towards the wristband, it won't fire, but if it's pointed away from the wristband and within a relatively close distance, it will fire. And the idea being if a cop gets in a fight and loses his gun, the assailant can't pick it up and shoot the guy with it. You could do vitamin authentication technology combined with smart guns, and only you can fire your gun unless someone cuts you open and swallows your already partially digested smart gun pill, which is gross, and you got bigger problems.
So is each vitamin keyed differently, or does the field come from you? Do you know what I'm saying?
It says it sends an 18-bit signal, so I would imagine that means that the pill itself stores 18 bits that are unique to it.
Right.
So
ostensibly somebody could steal your vitamin and swallow it themselves and then be able to authenticate as you.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that it's only 18-bit because that's all they can figure out how to store right now.
Right.
But eventually that will become strong enough that it will be way more unique.
What would be crazy is if somehow used like the DNA from the stomach acid to create a unique key.
Yeah.
So like someone swallows your pill, it's like whatever. It's your authentication field is completely different from my authentication field,
which gives salt a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be an encryption key. The encryption key would be the pill, and the salt would be something unique about your chemical makeup.
Right.
That's wild. The future is awesome.
Yeah. Dear 10-year-old me, look out, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Next story. Game designer Jason Rohrer designs a game meant to be played 2,000 years from now. So, this dude designed a game, and it's a board game. He designed a game that... So the only thing unique about the game, it's a unique game because he created it, but as far as how it's designed to be played 2,000 years from now is all of the parts are metal, and most of them are watertight. And what he did was he made up all the rules and everything, and then he made a container to bury it in, and then he hid it in the desert. So no one except him knows all of the rules or what all the pieces look like. And he printed out the rules, put the whole thing in an environment-proof container, and buried it in the desert so that someday somebody may or may not come across this thing, and if and when they find it, they will have everything they need to play the game. And he's not giving out any details on how the game is played.
So I'm making a prediction right now, 2,000 years in the future, somebody's going to find it, try and play it, and go, man, this game sucks.
It actually makes me think of the guys that did Cards Against Humanity. I think it was the guys that did Cards Against Humanity. Also have a game called This Game Has Not Been Play Tested, which is the same problem this guy has.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I bet he didn't play test that, which means that he thought this was awesome and nobody else got any input on it to be able to say, what if?
Yeah.
And so it sucks.
None of the rest of these stories are that interesting.
All right. So that's the Rumpus.
Caught smoking, double choking, linger on my spleen. I'm dying to buy some time. Newspaper conservation, can't believe this intellection, can't believe these words are true. All of the lost it seems that the words escape out of state. That's not really true. Strange, we're gonna build a better nation, dream